Hi everyone, welcome to today's SAP Community Call. My name is Menina Chao. I'm part of the SAP Community team and I'm your host during this call. Our topic of this session is SAP Data Intelligence Overview and Outlook. Our speakers are Tobias Koebler and Christian Tietz, product managers for SAP Data Intelligence, and they will discuss the major capabilities and deployment options and also highlight new features of the latest release, SAP Data Intelligence 3.0. As always, this call is a recorded session, and you will be able to access all replays of previous SAP community calls at community.sap.com under the Events tab. But before I hand over, I would just like to make you aware of the Q&A button, where you can already raise questions during the presentation. And afterwards, after Tobias and Christian are done, we'll reserve some time to answer as many questions as we can. Tobias, Christian, thank you for your time, and the stage is yours now.
Thank you for the introduction. Also a warm welcome from our end. So my name is Tobias Koebler. I'm leading the product management team for data management in the HANA space. And there we are mainly dealing with SAP Data Intelligence and the ERM portfolio and so on. And with me today is Christian Tietz, and he's also product manager for DI with a strong focus also on the integration aspects, also in combination with ML scenarios. And there we also see some more points later. Let's go quickly to the agenda for today. So let's see if this is working. Yeah, so this is the agenda. So what we thought is first to go a little bit about SAP Data Intelligence, the overview, a little bit of the evolution, the strategy for this year, and then also show something in the system, because maybe there are some of you who didn't have the chance so far to see maybe this in action. And after the demo, we focus a little bit on the outlook. And then, and this was also the core, based on a lot of feedback we got from customers and discussions and events. People asking what is now with the overall enterprise information management strategy, especially when they see now SAP Data Intelligence. Is this now replacing all of the other tools? Please let me know, SAP, what you plan. And this is exactly covered in the second chapter. We want to speak a little bit about this, how we see this world, what we want to do there, and how we go forward. And as already mentioned, the Q&A session at the end. So let's start, and I will set the stage before Christian will take over. I mean, if you now look really on the super high from the cloud, not the cloud like the technical cloud, more like from a really high attitude, where we are belonging to. So SAP Data Intelligence in general belongs to the whole business technology platform, of course, but they're especially part of the HANA cluster. So all the HANA services are there summarized. And I mean, probably you have seen this picture, or at least the picture where you only saw amount, quality, and usage. We came now in with our offerings to create the span area. So to be there, the data creator for all the existing products in this area. So for SAP HANA or SAP HANA Cloud, Data Warehouse Cloud, and so on. With an own offering, the flagship is SAP Data Intelligence. This is available on-prem or in the cloud. We talk about this later too. And there we are the guys who has to deliver the data at the right point in time to the other products, not only in the HANA hemisphere, also outside. And this is what we're doing, where we are seeing also a lot of new integration scenarios coming up, especially in this area. But this is only to set the stage for Christian. And with this, I would then hand over to you to describe a little bit more the details about data intelligence. So I will unshare and then you can just share.
All right, thank you, Tobias. And warm welcome from my side as well. So then let me quickly check. Okay. Sharing just my whole screen. Okay. So, all right. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So as already said, I would like to give, let's say, more deep dive into SAP Data Intelligence, and we start with this kind of overview, so to say. And in the middle, you see SAP Data Intelligence. And as already said, SAP Data Intelligence is positioned as a comprehensive data management solution that aims to connect, to discover, to enrich, as well as to orchestrate, let's say, disjoint data assets across the connected landscape that you see on the left-hand side with SAP, that you see on the right-hand side with not necessarily SAP, and that allows actually at the very end of the day to turn basically these data assets that I've mentioned into actionable business insights in the context, of course, of enterprise applications. And let's start with the left-hand side. So you see SAP, where a strong focus is, of course, on ABAP integration, which means that we are basically that SAP Data Intelligence has a framework. So there is a framework available which can be used from SAP Data Intelligence, which allows to basically extract data from ABAP systems by using, at the very end of the day, for most of the cases, SLT technology, at least for, let's say, for instance, ECC systems on any database, for instance, S4 systems as well. For newer S4 systems, it's even possible to extract CDS views and so on. And this is the ABAP integration part, where BW is also, let's say, a subcategory of, at least in principle, but for BW, we do have an own integration available. So, which means that it's possible to read BW artifacts, to extract BW artifacts, and to basically transition them into flat structure. And this flat structure gives you, let's say, some sort of, let's say, agility. Sorry, you are more agile in order to, basically, for instance, replace attributes, to also apply some logic and so on top of that. And this is with the BW integration. And in terms of BW, there is not only a data integration capability, there is also an orchestration capability, because it's possible to trigger, let's say, BW process chains from SAP Data Intelligence. So there the orchestration capabilities of SAP Data Intelligence come into play as well. Then cloud data integration, for this, the idea is to have one single API available, which allows to, let's say, one single interface, one single API, which allows to connect to SAP cloud applications like Fieldglass, which is already available, like SAP C4HANA, SAP CX, how it is nowadays called, and also there's like Marketing Cloud and so on. SuccessFactors, of course, Concur, Ariba, and so on. So we aim there to be, let's say, a set to provide one single interface in order to make such a generic integration done. So not only applying to data, but also to metadata, for instance. Then, as I've also already talked about workflows, so there is the orchestration capability of SAP Data Intelligence. On the left-hand side, you see BW process chains mentioned, but we do also, let's say, we are also capable, or Data Intelligence is also capable of triggering external data services jobs, for instance, or HANA SDI flow graphs, and the same applies, for instance, also to CPI flow graphs and so on. So there, the idea, as said, is to basically be capable of taming the data processes, or of basically being capable of controlling data processes that are running outside of data intelligence in the enterprise, basically. Then you see SAP Analytics Cloud. So for this, we do have a dedicated push operator. That's such a kind of mechanism that allows to push data sets into, or that allows to push files into SAP Analytics Cloud. And in SAP Analytics Cloud, there will be initially a data set created, and on top of this data set, you can build stories, you can directly use smart predict functionality, and so on. So you can build SSC models, you can enable them for planning or for business intelligence, and then you can do your visualizations or build sophisticated planning models depending on your needs, of course. So there is a direct integration, which, by the way, as said, consists of pushing data to SSC, which means that the data set, or that the data that is pushed to SSC is, of course, persisted there. So this is, one should be aware of that when talking to customers, obviously. And then we do have a HANA integration available, which is more or less self-explaining. So it's possible to extract data from HANA. It's possible to write data back to HANA. There is also an orchestration capability, as mentioned above, which means to be capable of orchestrating, of triggering SDI flow graphs in the remote HANA system. And from a machine learning perspective, we do also have the possibility to orchestrate HANA machine learning frameworks. So when the data is completely located in HANA, and it could happen that you maybe think of using HANA machine learning frameworks in an automated way, which is done for APL, so automated predictive library, or when you want to use a more, let's say, deeper framework where you can do some sort of hyperparameter controlling as well and so on. You can maybe use the predictive analysis library, PAL, how it is abbreviated, so to say. And then you can basically trigger these processes from SAP Data Intelligence, and you get also some lifecycle management as well and so on. So from Data Intelligence, you can also leverage HANA machine learning processing, and you have a push down as well. When we then move to the right-hand side, you see mostly non-SAP related things, as already said at the very beginning. So we do also have standard connectors to streaming brokers like Kafka, like Google PubSub, for instance, or MQTT, and so on. We do offer standard connectors to the most prominent cloud storages, like Amazon S3, Azure Data Lake, as well as GCS, so Google Cloud Storage. We do also offer connectors to the HDFS, so to the Hadoop distributed file system. And from an orchestration perspective, it's also possible to trigger external Spark jobs by using Apache Livy. So that's also possible from Data Intelligence. We can connect to, or you can also expose Data Intelligence processes as, let's say, RESTful services. So we do also offer, let's say, standard or let's say a generic connection to REST APIs and so on, to not necessarily SAP databases, as already said. So for instance, IBM DB2, Oracle, MS SQL, MySQL, and so on. Public cloud offerings are included as well. So like AWS Redshift and so on. So we aim to also be generic there, because as said, we see many customers in the situation that they have disparate landscapes, that they are using, let's say they have hybrid landscapes, they're using stuff from SAP, they're using stuff from non-SAP and so on. And SAP Data Intelligence aims to be, you can think of that like a spider in the net, so to say, which is then holding the pieces together, and which also provides standard functionality which is needed in order to act as such a kind of comprehensive data management tool, like metadata and governance, so to be capable of enabling data discovery, of building up a metadata catalog, of providing a business glossary that the customer, that the end user can establish, of providing profiling capabilities and so on. So to be capable of also governing basically the data, because when it comes to data science initiatives, for instance, or when it comes to data processes across a disparate landscape, you have oftentimes experienced that there is a lack of data governance, which has prevented many projects from going live. And that's why metadata and governance is an essential part within SAP Data Intelligence. Then we do have intelligent processing, so everything that is related to, for instance, data analysis, exploratory data analysis, machine learning processes, and so on. So we do also have an integrated Jupyter Lab environment in Data Intelligence, which you will also see in the demo later on. And that's also why I would, let's say, shorten this a bit. Then as said, data orchestration and monitoring capabilities. So when it comes to data orchestration, so orchestrating jobs that are remotely running in other systems, for instance, then we also do, of course, need monitoring functionalities for those orchestrated data processes, but also for the data processes that run in Data Intelligence itself and so on. So this is also there. We do also have a connection management, obviously, that allows to populate all these connections that you want to have in place. And then last but not least, the data pipelining. So this is the key concept of SAP Data Intelligence, which you will also see in the demo later on, because it actually allows, this is a central environment which allows the users to basically establish, to create, to design these data processes that are basically doing those things that are desired. All right, having said that, let's quickly talk about the deployment options of Data Intelligence. So this is also, I would say, when talking to customers, some sort of unique selling point for SAP Data Intelligence, because it is really flexible when it comes to deployment. So we do not only offer, let's say, on-premise deployments, let's say pure on-premise deployments that can be done on, let's say, container platforms with persistent storage from Cisco, OpenSUSE, and Red Hat, which are our selected partners there. So you can also take SAP Data Intelligence on-premise and you can install it on a managed Kubernetes environment hosted at a hyperscalers environment, for instance. So like Google, Azure, AWS, as well as Alibaba Cloud. So which means that you actually bring your own license and deploy it on a managed Kubernetes service, as already said. And many customers basically leverage this kind of deployment because they do not really want to take care of an entire Kubernetes cluster, because this, of course, also comes with, let's say, some effort that one needs to invest and so on. And in this case, many customers think that this is the perfect balance to have an on-premise asset deployment, which is, at the end of the day, a public cloud offering. And then last but not least, we do also have a Vertis, so let's say a private cloud offering, which is offered by our partner VertiStream. And on the right-hand side, you see SAP Data Intelligence as a fully managed cloud service on the SAP Cloud Platform. So which means that SAP is basically taking care of providing the service, of deploying the service and so on. And you can just use it as a kind of as a service offering, as already said. And this is also available. You can consume it via CPEA as well as via subscription-based contracts. And as said, so it's already there since 1 year. And there has been a renaming because the Data Intelligence on-premise offering was formerly called SAP Data Hub on-premise, and the naming has now been unified. All right, having said that, let's move on to the demo. For this, I'm going to jump to the tooling. So you can see the browser. You can see Data Intelligence Launchpad.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I wasn't sure whether I've shared the entire screen. Okay, so what you see right here are the standard applications within SAP Data Intelligence that are provided by default, of course, by deploying things into a Docker container, because Data Intelligence actually runs on a containerized environment on the Kubernetes cluster. So we basically use Docker as a containerization, so to say, as a kind of runtime, and Kubernetes as a lifecycle management software for managing the workloads across the containerized environments and so on. So at the very end of the day, everything that you can deploy into a Docker container could potentially be deployed also in Data Intelligence here. So just to also highlight, let's say, the flexibility and the openness of SAP Data Intelligence. But what you see right here, as said, are the standard applications that are provided by default in Data Intelligence 2006. So we are currently using a very, let's say, new release there. And the aim of this demo is just to show you the, let's say, the most important applications that you would use in order to accomplish an end-to-end scenario, which could be related to machine learning, but does not need, of course, necessarily relate to machine learning and so on. So, and we start with the connection management. Let me quickly go below. And here in the connection management, you see all the connections that are specified in the system that I'm currently using. So there are, of course, also many HANA DBs, there are many S3s and so on that are used by colleagues there. And I want to go to connection types because I think this is more interesting for this audience. And here you see all the names and all the standard adapters there that we provide, that SAP Data Intelligence provides out of the box. So it ranges from ABAP up to BW, for instance, data services. So data services as a kind of remote orchestration capability there. So you can just connect to data services in order to, as I already said, trigger remote data services jobs, to DB2, HANA DB from a database perspective, but HANA XS also from an application or from an, let's say, from an orchestration perspective as well. So HANA SDI flow graphs, just to mention that once again. HTTP, so we also offer, let's say, generic adapters or let's say generic connections to protocols, so to say. So HTTP is one of them, but OData is also one of them, OpenAPI and so on. Kafka, so once you have, let's say, a remote Kafka cluster available, it's also possible to connect to that and to use, let's say, Kafka integration capabilities that are offered from SAP Data Intelligence. So you can write into Kafka topic and you can also read from existing Kafka topics, for instance. Then databases like MS SQL, MySQL, Redshift from AWS, and SAP IQ. So we do not only offer a connection to SAP HANA, but also to SAP IQ, which is perfectly, let's say, feasible in order to get used, for instance, for IoT scenarios, because it's also a column-based database and also very resilient and so on. Yeah, and that's basically it. So there are many, as said, many connections to systems that are provided out of the box. However, if you maybe want to connect to a system which is not listed there, it's of course possible, because you can leverage, like, for instance, if you want to connect to a database which is not listed there, like for instance Teradata and so on. So you can of course create your own operator. You can of course create your own framework in order to connect to, for instance, this database by using ODBC or JDBC framework. So this is also possible from Data Intelligence. And the list is, by the way, also ever growing depending on the customer requests. And it's also pretty easy to create a new connection. So you can just click on this icon and then you can choose the connection type that you want to use. For instance, if you choose ABAP, you can also choose the protocols to be used. When we want to use RFC, so remote function call, you can also specify a gateway information there. And this gateway information is basically a choice between, do I want to use the SAP Cloud Connector or not? Because the SAP Cloud Connector is available in Data Intelligence since March this year. And it also allows, obviously, to also connect to on-premise systems. In this case, this ABAP system would be on-premise, and you are leveraging RFC in order to connect to this on-premise ABAP system by using a cloud connector, for instance. If you do not want to use a cloud connector, you can, of course, always go for a VPN setup or so. But cloud connector is a possibility for selected systems, and that's what I wanted to mention. All right, so this is the connection management. In order to proceed further, we can go to the Metadata Explorer. So the Metadata Explorer is the central entry point in order to manage all the metadata assets and all the data assets, so to say, across the connected landscape. So you can build up a metadata catalog, as already said at the very beginning, and this can be done right here. So you can click on Browse Connections, and here you can find a perfect overview about all the connections that are populated in the connection management and all the connections that's where it makes sense basically to take a look at the data sets and so on. So for instance, data services won't be found there because it does not really make sense to go for data services there. But you can of course take a look at BW data, S3 data, and so on. I want to take a look into S3 when I find it. Sorry, this S3 bucket. Then you see here bucket 1. So you also get, of course, a comprehensive overlook about the folder structure, the directories, and so on. You can then click on this one, and then you can see, for instance, all the CSV files that are listed there. We also support org and Parquet, so maybe Parquet for a better compression in comparison, or let's say in contrast to CSV files. And you can, for instance, click on that. You can have a data preview. First of all, you, of course, see the attributes, you see the metadata that is related, and so on. You can also take a look at the data preview, and then you see, let's say, a sample of data. You can take a look whether this makes sense at first glance or not. You can also profile the data set, which I do not want to do in the interest of time. But for instance, let's just assume you see, okay, you see maybe a typo at first glance, or you maybe see something that you want to quickly change, and you ask, how can I do some sort of data preparation without actually building sophisticated data flows? And for this, we do have the prepare data. Let's say prepare data layer. So let's say data preparation layer that is built in within the Metadata Explorer. And for this, a data sample is acquired. And then you see here all the columns there. And you can, for instance, convert values. So for instance, right here, you see that this is a column of type string. And you can do the following data actions. You can change the case. For instance, you can change everything to uppercase in case that you want that. And then you can apply it, and it's of course applied on a temporary basis. So you do not alter the underlying data set and so on. You can also go ahead and proceed with further data preparation. And once you are done, you can go on actions, and you can then of course run the preparation. And for this, so this file was originating from S3, right? But you can also take this file and write it into HANA. So that's also the flexibility that we have with this data preparation layer. So you can just choose a HANA schema where you have access to, you can give it a name, and you can apply this data preparation. You can also choose between override and insert append. And once you have done that, once you have applied this data preparation, a table in HANA will be generated. And that's basically how it works. And this table then pays attention to the previously, or let's say to the previous applied data actions that you have made. So for, let's say, more or less lightweight data preparations that you have in mind, it makes sense to use this layer. All right, then let's go further to the Metadata Explorer. Here you see some rules. So in order to maybe conclude that, you can then basically take the data assets, you can persist the data assets, because by default, the metadata is not persisted within Data Intelligence. But in order to build up such a metadata catalog, you of course need to have a common basis there. And for this, the data assets, the metadata assets are persisted within Data Intelligence. And having this, and basically having published them, so to say, you can build up such, let's say, a so-called metadata catalog in order to also enable some efficient search for colleagues, for instance, for data scientists or data engineers that are interested in the data foundation of the connected landscape within SAP Data Intelligence. We can then move forward to rules. So here you can define and categorize rules. So you can, for instance, you have many different rule categories that you can take there, or that you can take as a basis. You can also create new ones. And for instance, just to quickly show that, you have a rule book right here, and here you see the parameters So you see the country name is the parameter and the conditions that are applied to this parameter. And here the country is not null. So we aim for, let's say, so the rule basically is just saying the country should not be null, and the list of countries should be in the list of US and Germany in this case. And you can take this rule and you can bind it to a data set. And then the data set, you can then apply some data quality checks on this data set based on the rules that you have defined. And then let's move forward to the business glossary. So for the business glossary, you see the terms that are available there, for instance, and you can also set up new terms, of course, and these terms are then related. For instance, when I click on gender, you can then, let's say, define some relationships here. And for instance, this gender term is then related to this S3 file. And that's what happens right here. So you can basically introduce the vocabulary in order to understand in order to map the technical metadata, the technical information to the business information. And this is where the business glossary then plays an important role in data intelligence. All right, then in order to move forward, let's go to the key of data intelligence. As already mentioned, this is the model application, and the model application allows to basically easily create data processes, so to say. So data processes also, of course, sophisticated data processes, because you are also capable of adding script languages, or of, let's say, for instance, adding Python, pure Python, and so on and so forth. So here you build all the data processes that you can then execute and that are doing something more, and maybe also something intelligent or something which is related to just pure ETL and so on. So it's basically completely up to you. And for this, just to maybe show you a just simple graph here, you can just click on that and you see the graph is called data generator. And this graph, so something like that, an object like this is called graph, as already said, or pipeline. So this is synonymous, so to say. And you see, let's say, two rectangles right here. And this is called operators. So you have two operators. And you can click on that. And in this case, you see that this is just a JavaScript operator which generates data on a random basis. And this is what happens right here. I'm sorry. And I have already started the graph. The graph is running, as you can see below. And when you click on that, you click on Open UI, you see how this data is generated on a random basis. And this is how data intelligence basically works, because any of these operators is basically represented by an isolated service. So any of these operators can run on its own, basically. And they are communicating via APIs. And these APIs, this exchange of data sets is basically happening through input and output ports. In this case, you see output port, you see input port, the data is exchanged there. And what is happening underneath, that there is just a Kubernetes processing, basically. So one of these pipelines corresponds to the smallest computation unit within Kubernetes, which is called a pod. And this pod is then running across different Docker containers. In this case, you have one pod which is running across two Docker containers. So one Docker container associated with the data generator, and one Docker container associated with the terminal. And that's how data intelligence in principle works. And what I also wanted to show you is the data transform. So because with data intelligence, you also get the possibility to combine data from different sources, obviously. And in this case, the example that you see right here, you have a data set from S3, which is containing product reviews, so more or less semi or unstructured data. And the table consumer, in this case, contains data which is product master data, for instance, or structured data. And what we do right here in the data transform is to just join these data sets. And that's what happens right here. You join them, you apply a filter in this projection node, and you write this result back into S3. And this is what happens right here. In this case, it's a CSV file, but you can also choose asset or Parquet. And you can then take this data set as a basis in order to apply some intelligence on top of it, in order to apply maybe machine learning logic and so on. And this is basically how data intelligence works and how flexible it actually is. You do not need to start from scratch at all in data intelligence. We do also offer some sample graphs right here. So SAP Data Generator was one of them, but we do also have different subcategories right here that you can choose. For instance, if you're interested in SAP integration, or if you are interested in machine learning examples and so on. So you can easily just apply, you can easily just take a look into those sample graphs and then can just proceed accordingly. And we do also offer, in terms of operators, 290 operators out of the box, related to many different areas, as you see right here, ABAP area, Jupyter Notebook. This is a data structured data operators that I have applied right here, and so on. So you can basically choose the operators that you actually need for the things that you have in mind. And just in case that you need other operators, or that maybe that you are maybe searching for an operator which is not listed right here. That's not, of course, not a problem, because you can easily generate new operators. In this case, you just take a name, you can take a display name, and you can choose a base operator, because there are many programming languages that could act as a basis. And in this case, Python could act as a basis, Go, JavaScript, and so on. And you are pretty flexible, as already said, in order to create new operators. And last but not least, also in the interest of time, maybe, sorry, a bit overrunning there, we do also have the machine learning scenario manager right here, which I have already opened. And this machine learning scenario manager enables you to manage scenarios that are related to machine learning. And just to show you that, I have prepared an example, which is called marathon times prediction in Python. And so the use case is pretty easy. You have different runner IDs, so different runners. Basically, you have the half marathon time, which is recorded, and you want to predict the marathon time. And this is what happens right here. You can register a data set in this machine learning scenario manager. You can register notebooks, or you can create notebooks. You can create pipelines. These pipelines are related to the modeler pipelines. You can see the executions, you can see the models that are generated, and you can deploy them. And this is basically the environment where you can manage all these things. In this case, the dataset marathon times has already been registered by myself. I have created notebooks right here. So once I click on that, you will be redirected to the Jupyter Lab environment. And this is what happens right here. So you can just easily do some exploratory data analysis. You can also train the model there and so on. You can do all these things that you want right here, basically by leveraging Python. And in this case, you see that given the half marathon minutes and the marathon minutes accordingly, there is a linear relationship, obviously, in this, let's say, set of points, or at least it's obvious that a linear relationship could explain the model pretty well. And this is what happens right here. You can use scikit-learn in order to train a simple linear regression. You can see the linear functions, or which is then acting as an approximation for the set of points right here. And you can also train the model. You can create several quality measures in order to measure the quality of the model. In this case, it's the root mean squared error for this, but you can also use the R square KPI and so on in order to measure the model quality and so on. And this is what happens right here. And in order to operationalize this processing, you can use pipelines. And this is what I've prepared right here. You can use, it's pretty easy to also use, let's say, other pipelines. So you do not need to start from scratch. You can just give them a name and you can choose a template. And this is what happens right here. So we do have many different templates. You can also do this in R, so you are not bound to Python in this case. And when I click on model training, you see a pipeline appearing, and this pipeline is already there. So you do not need to change much, to be honest, right here. And you of course only need to adapt those things that need to be adapted. So you need to specify the file that should be read. You specify the Python coding. So it's just the best of, so to say, of the things that you have seen in Jupyter. And that's it, more or less. And then you can select this pipeline. You can click on execute, and then the model training has happened. I've already done this, and then I've already done that yesterday. And what you see right here is how the execution has taken place, and whether it was successful or not. In this case, it was successful. You get the root mean squared error the same as in the Jupyter, and that's it. And for this, you have then operationalized the model training, and you can also operationalize the deployment. And this is what happens right here. Just clicking on that, and then I will directly hand over to Tobias. Exactly. So what you see right here, you see the submit artifact name. So in this case, you basically specify the model that you want to use, in order you want to specify the trained model in order to handle the inference requests towards this model. And here you see the Python 3.6 inference operator. You have to adapt a couple of things right here in order to also specify the KPIs and so on. And then you have the Open API serve flow, which takes care of exposing this pipeline to RESTful service, and that's it. And so once you have clicked on deploy right here, this, as already said, this model, so basically this inference pipeline, so to say, is exposed as a RESTful service and can be called from the outside by other applications. So for instance, from Postman or something like that, or any other application, in order to then send the API requests, and Data Intelligence is basically handling the incoming API requests towards the previously trained model, so to say. All right, so That's it from my side. So let me quickly check. Because I just wanted also to show one more slide before handing over to Tobias. So what you have also seen is a bit of machine learning processing there, obviously. However, we oftentimes get the question, what is actually data intelligence? Is data intelligence a generic machine learning platform? How can we use data intelligence in the area of machine learning? And we, as a product management team, do see two areas where data intelligence is really strong at. The first thing is orchestrating already existing machine learning driven processes. So the best example right here to mention is HANA machine learning processing, because this comes out of the box. And for this, basically, or orchestrating AutoML scenarios and so on. So orchestration is one point and operationalizing is the other. And that's what you have seen in the really simple marathon example. But we do have many customers that have already Python code available, which is applied on SAP data that has been extracted, and they want to bring this into production. And for this, data intelligence could be a perfect fit, because it offers on one hand side integration to SAP systems, on the other side the framework in order to operationalize Python coding. And in this case, those two, let's say, more or less generic use cases are a good fit for SAP Data Intelligence. And SAP Data Intelligence is not meant, or it's not meant as to be a generic machine learning platform, basically. So it has some elements, as you have seen in Jupyter Lab environment, it has some elements to also act as a kind of generic machine learning platform for sure, but it's not the focus of data intelligence. The focus of data intelligence, as I said, orchestrate existing processes that are related to machine learning and operationalize machine learning driven processes. So we do not offer out of the box functionality for auto machine learning, for instance, or for auto feature engineering and for all these kind of processes. As said, these can be accomplished with data intelligence, but that's not the focus of data intelligence in the machine learning area. And having said that, I'm handing over to my colleague Tobias.
Okay, thank you, Christian, for the demo and all the insights. So we're gonna a little bit further, also to share a little bit about the focus and what we plan today and for the next couple of months. First of all, in general, what is the focus for us this year? So I mean, guys who already worked in the past with data intelligence, they know before it was called SAP Data Hub. So this was our big thing to harmonize also the name of the product. So as also the cloud version is in the market since last year. So we call it just SAP Data Intelligence. And also our big thing was in April that we had the release of our Data Intelligence 3.0 version, which is on premise, and at the same time the Data Intelligence version 2003. And this was the first time ever we had harmonized also from a feature level these two deployment options. And this is what we're now keeping in sync. Of course, with the cloud version, you get some features a little bit earlier, but this is important to understand. So SAP Data Hub is not there anymore. It's now called SAP Data Intelligence, but this doesn't mean more additional pricing, no license change, nothing. It's just the name. The second thing I want to mention is like, and the focus in general is for the DI this year on the data integration itself. So you will see more and more scenarios, better connectivity. We're working on improvements regards connecting to the SAP world, to the non-SAP world. This is the key topic for us this year. And this also goes together with the idea of enhancing the integration capabilities and scenarios we see with the ERM suite. I will talk about this also in the next chapter in some more detail. And as Christian just described, we have still the intelligent processing or intelligent tooling for ML there. So we see DI not like as the data science platform. This is not what we are aiming for, but we would like to give the possibilities that you can, as we learn, to operationalize your ML scenarios, or you can orchestrate them. And this is where we see the strength of the product. Then this is just a teaser. I mean, I hope all of you already read the blogs in April. This is what we delivered with 3.0 and the 2003 cloud release. I will not go through the details. I just want to tease that we have the blog there as well. There are videos, there are webinars, there's a link to the trial. Everything is described there, so I don't need to explain it again. And there's also a recording we did. And also when I look at the time, we will not focus there on more detail, but I think most of you already saw it. But maybe more important for you is how it's going further for this year. And we defined a few areas. I just want to highlight what we want to do there. So in the operations administration area, it's on the one side all about the connectivity, especially in the cloud setup, that the cloud connector gets more support of different systems, and then there are still some systems we can't cover right now. Backup recovery is a big thing, and in general how we handle the workload. Then of course we are looking for deeper application integration, also with things with generalized APIs, so that like products or applications, also non-SAP ones, can from outside trigger, for example, a pipeline, and also can receive information from a pipeline. So something like this, where you can then also better embed DI in the overall story. Then we're always looking for content and templates. We're working there with partners to get their content. We're working internally with the line of businesses to get them done. And there's, I think for the Q4 timeframe, the idea is to ship there some more. As always, we look for the connectivity aspects of the product where we have to enhance. We can react there also quickly on the customer request and on the market demands, and depending on this, we will bring this into the product. Then we have the interoperability with the HANA services. As you remember, one of my first slides was exactly we are part of the HANA family now with this product, which also means we will support them. And this will also mean deeper integration, end-to-end pipelining, especially SAC. There was also a question about this. So we have the capabilities to push it in, but not as from a feature coverage as we want to have it. So there are close collaborations right now, how we can exchange the data. Is it only metadata? Probably not. Probably first focusing on all you need, for example, to run your plannings and things like that. And there we will definitely see more possibilities for data interaction. Intelligent processing, I think Christian already explained all the activities there, so I can skip this. Then we have the area with data governance, so everything you saw in the demo from the metadata catalog. And there is one bigger feature we delivered. This was the business glossary, and there we will push more and more also ABAP related terminology into it. And the last area, and this is a really important one, this is why we have also an additional chapter for this, this is hybrid capabilities. And especially the question, what is with the enterprise information management portfolio and data intelligence, and how they work together. And with this, I would like to directly jump over to the second area, the update and strategy for EIM, because this is what I think I listen to this question in almost every customer presentation and every customer interaction. So what we did is first, we looked our existing portfolio, and EIM is the enterprise information management portfolio. There are a lot of different products. So we try to cluster it. Of course, we can argue if there may be some more capabilities in third product, but it's just like to give a high level overview which product can do what. And what we also then directly see is there are certain overlaps. And this is always also a tech ad when you do the when to use what session for EIM, it's like not acceptable, to be honest. I mean, we have a lot of products, the customer don't know what exactly to use when. There are overlaps, and we try now to harmonize this. And of course, this is not it's not a thing we can do from today to tomorrow. Especially keep in mind, we have just for the EIM portfolio more than 23,000 customers. So this will be not like we can go into maintenance for everything and then you only use DI. This is technically not possible. This is not working with our customers. We are aware of this. So this is why we thought about how can we give you also as an existing EIM customer value add out of DI, and how we can put the vision of our product. So what we did, we came up like with this idea that we go into certain steps to support existing EIM customers. Means the first what we want to do is to integrate the EIM portfolio whenever it makes sense in scenarios with DI. So this is a technical integration. And if you now look at the stack we have in EIM, they are all on-premise products. So we are in 99% of the cases talk about on-premise software, which runs in the customer's data center. And when we talk about DI, this is the data integration cloud product of SAP of the future. So of course there is the possibility now to step by step modernize your landscape by putting DI next to the existing EIM portfolio. So it means, as I said, first is we want to integrate, so a technical integration. We already did this with, for example, products like SLT. So SLT can write data into DI as an example. And now we go further with data services. SDI, we have to see if it makes sense or not, or we keep it in HANA. Information steward is a good example. And how we see the scenarios. And if you have good scenarios, feel free to reach out to us, because right now we're defining the prime cases with our customers. And depending on this, we also have then the priorities on the development needs. Said this, what we want to achieve is that we can establish hybrid scenarios. So this means you still run your data services on-prem, but you have now the DI cluster to execute your certain operations you couldn't execute on DS, or things you want to scale up and down, or maybe the connectivity is not there. There's the prime case is SLT, so replication technology, closely linked to ABAP, has advantages and disadvantages. Advantage really smoothly integrates with S4 and all the things. The downside is you have only certain possibilities to write to certain targets. And I heard, because in my role before I was PM for SLT as well, hey, can I write with SLT to Hadoop? This is what is started 3-4 years ago. Then it's now, can I write to S3, to file storage, to Kafka, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And the problem is we don't have in the ABAP layer and the NetWeaver layer real these capabilities. Means we would need to make a big investment to do this. And then the next customer is asking for data service, I want the same. For this, I want the same. For that, I want the same. This is not feasible. So in such a scenario, we have SLT for the Delta mechanism out of the ECC world, and then we use and can scale up DI to write data to targets you couldn't do before. And this is like the main idea behind these hybrid scenarios, to give you a value add with DI, but you stick to your existing on-premise portfolio. Nevertheless, of course, the long-term vision is to have one solution. And what we of course also work on is to bring all the capabilities of our existing products of data services, SLT, natively into data intelligence. I mean, this is clear. This is our vision, because we want to have with DI this one solution in the cloud. And if we have in the future customers who never used any EIM product, of course the guidance will go for data intelligence. But there will be a lot of customers, they need the hybrid scenarios because they did the investment, and this is what we want to save with exactly such an approach. And this is also, like, as I mentioned, the vision, so that we have all the capabilities in one product, but like with a smooth approach that you can not, that you don't have to switch your whole infrastructure, your whole landscape in one go. But of course, we make customer aware of that. We see the future, of course, in a cloud integration tool, and this is DI. And with this, I think I'm at the end, and speed it up a little bit. So we are now at the Q&A. I mean, just to recap what we have seen. I mean, you have seen data intelligence as part of the whole HANA product family nowadays. You saw that the capabilities in the system. We spoke about the direction, especially this year, data integration. Data science, it's not a data science platform, as Christian said. It's like the great possibility you get now to orchestrate your ML scenarios and to operationalize them. So these are the key benefits we can deliver. And the other important thing is we are working to get out the confusion when to use what, when to use data services, when to use DI by this approach that we say we first integrate our portfolio with DI. We want to give you hybrid scenarios to leverage these and get a value add instantly just by adding this new infrastructure. And of course, the long-term vision, and we are not talking about next 2 or 3 years, it's of course a little bit more to do, but this is what we're working on, that we can provide you one environment and you don't need to operate several things at the same time. But this is a little bit the background. It was also important for us to share with you our really long-term vision. But with this, I think we can then start with a Q&A. So I think we already answered a few questions. Let me quickly go through the chat. What is still open, or is there any other procedure?
No, that's really good. I think we can go ahead. We had you and Christian already answering a lot of questions. Now it's up to you how you'd like to proceed.
Okay, then let's go through a few questions, because there was also some really interesting one. One was the point with has data intelligence the ETL capabilities, or do we use data services, or will it be replaced? I mean, I try to answer this. So of course we bring the main cases from data services also in DI at one point in time. That it could be, I say, fully replaced. But of course, the reality will look like that customer will still stick to, in certain, especially critical applications, and they're running for years, to data services. So they will be able to coexist at the end of the day as well. So let's go back, and there is a question about certification. There is no certification really for DI. I mean, if you want to become a partner, there are of course ways to certify you as with a certain partner level for also data intelligence, like a classroom training where you get something like this. This is not available. That's a question, how to get access to the solution for testing in use cases. Good question. We have a trial version available. I think it was also posted in the chat. What you can do is you can also search in the community pages. We have their blog from one of my colleagues, and he is explaining how you can get a trial. What is behind the trial? You get a full data intelligence environment from a software perspective for free, but you have to take care about the infrastructure cost. This means, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's GCP and S3 right now where you can deploy it. What does it mean? You can purchase there your infrastructure, so the Kubernetes cluster, and then there is a service that you can deploy out of the box the full DI cluster. We have there also some exercises included, and then you can play then with this around. So this is what we have there. So there's one question, if the recording will be available and the slides will be exchanged. I believe so.
Yes.
So exactly. And
we'll
we had also
link.
Perfect. Thank you. And then there's a question, is there any other solution available from Suite on HANA with CDC log-based solution? I believe the question will go to the direction how I can get Delta data out of the Suite on HANA system, which is an ERP, of course. And what we see is there, it depends on the target. I mean, if you have an HANA, you can use SDI or SLT. And this is as well as the answer. So when it's one second, with log-based would be then SDI, and trigger-based would be SLT. That's what we offer there. But when you look on the HANA in general, there are certain limitations with log-based. So there was also a switch from SDI to use trigger in general, because this approach was way faster from the performance figures, and we changed this, I think, now over all the products. Then let's see how it will add value to SAP MDG portfolio. I'm quite new to DI and don't know so much. Hard to say. I mean, MDG is a totally different field you play. So that's all about master data and how to harmonize it. This is not what DI is doing. Probably there's scenarios where MDG can be leveraged by certain aspects of DI, but there is not a prime use case I can tell you where you can directly start working on and it's running. Yeah, so with this, I think we're also at the end of the hour. I mean, from my end, I can just say it was a great session. And thank you for your time. Anything to add from the other speakers and moderator?
No, I think it was really great having you and very insightful. We had shared a lot of links, but you also a lot of insights, and we look forward to more coming from you guys. Thanks for all participants, and since we're at the top of the time, we will stop the recording now and wish you a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.